This is the Superpowered Mind podcast for inquiring individuals who are tired of the struggle for peace, happiness, and clarity. I'm Claire Diamond, ready to help you explore the principles of the mind, the self, and reality to unlock ultimate mental freedom. This podcast is the one to listen to if you're ready to experience the capabilities of the superpowered mind. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 49. And today we're looking at being seen. And this driver to be seen came up in an email I received from a participant in the course talking about how much she wanted to be seen, how important she felt for everybody. Everybody wants to be seen. Everybody wants to be heard. Everyone wants to be acknowledged. And through that, there's this feeling of validity and worth, survival even. And I think that's really true, isn't it? That from the belief system of what we are as a separate entity that can somehow find wholeness through attention or love or regard or respect or acknowledgement, there's a tremendous drive to be seen and to use the elements that at our disposal, our work or our body, our looks, our help, our support of other people, our voices, to try to get a sense of existence in that way. And the more we look at this, the more we can start to see the difference between being seen and seeing, and how between the two lies a freedom that actually sets free all of these elements that would be used in the attempt to solidify the identity and instead just become what they are. They just become what they are with no ulterior purpose other than what they're there for. So a little bit of philosophy for us all. This is a rhyme that my mum, very academic mum, used to say to my sister and I when we were little, which probably explains a lot, actually, but here we go. So this is from George Berkeley, who was an Anglo-Irish philosopher who coined the phrase immaterialism, this idea that there is only a subjective reality. And so he wrote the first two verses of this, and then another philosopher wrote the second two. So, there once was a man who said God must think it exceedingly odd if he finds that this tree continues to be when there's no one about in the quad. Dear sir, your astonishment's odd. I am always about in the quad, and that's why the tree will continue to be, since observed by yours faithfully God. And then the second two verses, if objects depend on our seeing, so that trees unobserved would cease treeing, then my question is who is the one who sees you and assures your persistence in being? Dear sir, you reason most oddly. To be's to be seen for the bodily, but for spirits like me, to be is to see, sincerely the one who is godly. So it's a rhyme looking at, does something still exist if it's not being seen? Is there still a tree if no one's looking at the tree? And the rhyme is saying, God is looking at the tree, so there's always a tree. And what I think is interesting for us is when we're looking at consciousness is really a synonym for God, isn't it? It's the same thing. Like consciousness, intelligence, aliveness is God. If we're considering that God is the power behind all life, is the means through which everything arises, consciousness, intelligence, life is God. And the consciousness of the human mind is not separate from that infinite absolute consciousness. So the consciousness, how can it be? Where are the edges of it? So the consciousness that is observing speaking now is infinite absolute consciousness observing content, isn't it? Observing objects arising, observing sound, vibration. And so what are we? Are we the object that is being observed? There's a body for sure, but that the I that believes it's controlling the body, what is that? Where does that exist? And that's the thing that is trying to be seen, that's trying to be validated and made worthy by being acknowledged, by having attention, by having love. And it can't be. It can't, because it doesn't exist. It's not even available to be seen. Unlike the relative world of trees and Oxford colleges and tables and bodies, there is no separate entity that can exist as a perceptual actuality in the relative world. So what am I? I am God. I am witnessing content arising. And because that consciousness that I am is infinite and absolute, albeit it's associated in through a perceptual form that has limitations on what can be perceived. It's the same consciousness, isn't it? It's just operating via a form that allows for perception to actually happen of things. That means that that's what I am. And so it's so interesting now, I think, because all the things that are happening, so all the behavior, we might feel so low and down, so lonely. Here I am, I'm doing this thing. No one's seeing me. No one's noticing me. I might as well not exist. But I, the true me, consciousness, is watching these things happen. And that's the marvel. It's actually mind-blowing, really. It's always being seen. Behavior is always being seen by consciousness. And consciousness doesn't need anything to exist. It doesn't need to be acknowledged or recognized. It's there. Without it, really nothing. And so that mind that hangs out in that space of invalidity, worthlessness, total danger of not surviving because of not being seen, that mind is a conglomeration of thoughts, and those thoughts are being seen. They are being witnessed, and therefore they exist as an experience. And this is such a breakthrough, because this means that all of that behavior, all of those actions, there's no need for them to pull in attention to stabilize an existence of an entity that can't even exist. Instead, the actions and the behavior, because they're being witnessed, are the means through which learning happens. There's nothing to secure. Nothing can be secured in them. All that is going on is that every action creates an interaction with other forms, and through that generates responses and feedback and more information, more questions maybe generates emotions and desires that can also be seen. And that entire happening is a learning process of freedom that is being observed, being witnessed by the truth of what we are, consciousness. And through that switch, so that switch there isn't a me that has to be seen. There is a me consciousness that is witnessing everything that arises. And this learning process now, because everything now is a learning process, all behavior, all actions are simply an interaction with other forms, generating more data. That's it. And there is absolute freedom in that. And it doesn't matter whether we're talking about cooking or podcasting or parenting, running a country, it doesn't matter. It's the same process. It's a learning process of actions creating a response with nothing to secure in the midst of it. And the reason why it's so important to still recognize those actions and not just to hang out in the space, well, all there is consciousness, nothing else, is because consciousness is only able to witness forms via this body, via this form, this sensory form. Without that, there is no form information, no data, no experience at all. And this seeing of how things actually are, what I am is consciousness, what I am is intelligence, and there's a body mind which represents a set of perceptions and behaviors and learnings, conditioning, that is now available to learn, free now of the idea that any action is going to secure a separate me that is separate from the universal, separate from the infinite, separate from consciousness, intelligence, love, peace, beingness. How could that be? And so now this learning process is about how does learning be the means through which that body mind aligns to truth. That's all that's going on really, through that it stops operating from beliefs that are not true. It stops replicating its fears, its needs, its shames, insecurities. And having those two together means that this conversation isn't a bypass. It's very interesting, isn't it? So let's add in one more little bit of philosophy here. The Descartes line, cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, starts to also become very interesting here as well, because I think, therefore I am. Where is the I in that, really? Am I the enabler of thinking? Am I the one doing the thinking? Or am I the product of the thoughts? And really, when we start looking at ourselves as the infinite and absolute, the I is the observer, isn't it? It's the observer of thinking happening. So, and again, this is absolute freedom. So when the mind, when it's lost in its thoughts, the thoughts are just real. It doesn't look like anyone is thinking. It just looks like this is reality. So I might be here. God, I feel so dreadful. Everyone hates me. What's the point in me? I'm such a failure. Everything goes wrong all the time. That mind thinking is completely lost. All that exists is thoughts. The mind is totally identified to the thought-created version of me in a thought-created reality. Looks totally real. And then there's the enabling of that process, which is the power to think. So the power to think and to create concepts, to imagine, a psychological world being created that is unrelated really to actually what's going on in reality in that moment. That is a powerful ability, a powerful human ability, maybe extending to some extent in some animals, but for humans, it's really our thing, isn't it? It's our asset. So baked into the body mind is the power to think. And then there's the conscious mind watching thought happen. The infinite consciousness, localized or given access to form really via this body, watching thinking happening. So the I think, therefore I am, we can start be really much more specific. What is the I in that? The I is watching thought happen. And that is the I of existence. That's the I that knows beingness, that knows itself. Everything else is either an ability to think, which is inherent in a human body mind, or a construct of self made of thought that is here 1 second and gone the next. There's no existence in that whatsoever. Yeah. So it's really fascinating, isn't it? And just that bit of freedom, I am seeing. The conscious mind is seeing. That is existence. Is the ability to, is the witnessing of all content arising. From that, when there is no need for a separate entity to be seen, how much more freedom there is to make friendships, to ask for what we want in relationships, to really enjoy another person, to celebrate another form, because the relationship isn't about securing an unsecurable, believed separate entity. I mean, truly, this is the shift of mind. This is the space that sets all relationships free. It doesn't mean, seeing that what we are is consciousness doesn't mean that we have no need for friendships or companionship or relationships or partners. No, it's the opposite, really. Same as oxygen, same as water and food. There are fundamental needs of the human body mind, and relationship needs in particular are absolutely liberated from the recognition that there is nothing in this relationship that can secure what doesn't exist. Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Lots of love. Bye. Thank you for listening to Superpowered Mind with me, Claire Diamond. If you want extra support in the exploration of your mind, download our exclusive subliminal recording, especially for podcast listeners, on bit.ly/podcast subliminal.